Okay.
Hello, everybody. We are all in a spontaneous moment here at Becoming Quantum Conscious, and my name is Bart Sharp, and you are on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3, broadcasting out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And we're also on Roku, cable television, UPR website, Facebook, YouTube, and all of these wild things. And for tonight, all I can say is we've been eating pizza at Renly Bon. We are in the zone, which is what we call this area, the zone in southwest France and the home of Richard Stanley. And I have beside me Richard Stanley here today. I'm going to give him a little more space. Uh, how you doing, Richard?
Well, it's a great pleasure to be joining you, sir.
Yes,
For us
yes,
both to be in the same room and on the same side of the Atlantic.
indeed, in lovely France. And here we are with the topic of dark and light. And can't think of a better person to explore this topic and not to be scary about it and not to be too woo woo about it, but just to explore it. And we are in the zone, which let me explain that a little bit. There's a very high powered energy area here between Renly-Bon, where we're at tonight, this old Roman town, Pic de Bougueroche, which is a Stargate mountain of magnitude, and then Renly Chateau. It's a little triangle we call the zone so lovingly because of all the great power spots and all the creativity that happens at power spots. Or on the other side, you go into the dark side. Ooh. So, Richard, what's been happening to you in the zone these days?
Well, as ever, it's been a war, an occult conflict. I think when I first came here, which was now 34 years ago, in the summer of 1990, um, Marcel Captier, the former gravedigger and sacristan from the church of Rennes le Chateau, told me that Rennes was, quote, a high place where opposing forces are confronting each other.
Mm.
Marcel wasn't clear about what these opposing forces were. There's the inference that we're talking about light and dark, good and evil. But in reality, it's obviously in heretical Cathar terms, it's kind of spirit versus matter, spirituality versus materialism, which is something we see played out almost every day here. And beyond that, you could also see it as a clash between matriarchy and the patriarchal force of the Holy Roman Church, among others.
Mm.
And again, that's not exactly good and evil, but they're certainly opposing forces. And it seems that the zone is where these things are polarized to the point where you can actually notice them. I think that these elements are present in everyday life all the time, but there's just something here which seems to polarize things to the point where the conflict becomes obvious.
Indeed. And I like to come into theory is that when you have this much energy, your shadow shows up. And some people act out their shadow in the weirdest ways, and it's also magnified in the weirdest ways here for with all the things that happen here. Like we just had one of the sacred sites closed down, the Caves of Mary Magdalene, by the mayor. And here we are at Renly Chateau, this huge beacon point of energy. And we're talking about a big mountain, or not a, or a big hill, small mountain. And all of these ley lines from all over Europe, being the most significant, the Giza Pyramid, are all connected to here. That is a lot of light coming into this chateau, beaming out, and people get magnified by it, blessed by it. And then also the darkness with some of those weird things called greed, power, lust, addiction, all showing up in people's lives. So, it's an interesting place to be, when you're running with the stuff. And we're in Richard's home, And Richard's home is not boring. I just have to say that right off. You can see multitudes of books and all of this good stuff because Richard stays busy creating new stuff, which your newest creation, which I have somewhere around here. And I guess I had to, oh, there we go.
There's a copy just out of camera range,
One of Richard.
which is
Oh, and let me tell you, go ahead. Richard is if you don't know, is a major. He's created several films. He's written books. He's also an anthropologist.
Yeah, I studied anthropology. I mean, and I've also made a bunch of Hollywood movies. I guess in the so-called real world outside the zone, people tend to think of me as a maker of horror movies or supernatural horror. But that's partly because of the way that the supernatural is stigmatized out there. Really, the genre is one of the few areas where I'm actually allowed to deal with supernatural themes. The moment you are dealing with supernatural subject matter, you're basically pigeonholed into the bracket of a yeah, supernatural horror, which is what I'm known for in the outside world.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't find anything particularly horrible about the supernatural, but it is a very big part of my life. Yeah.
It just seems like, and just because you do dark movies or things, or you feel like you're a dark person, doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means that there's certain people out there in the world, and myself doing a lot of shamanic work with people who have a big dark energy inside of them, but it's almost like the negative side of a battery. The light being the positive, the darkness being the negative, and
Well, as they say, no light without shadow, no shadow without light.
that's right.
The very fabric of our world is ultimately made out of positive and negatively charged particles. The constant flicker and vibration of the subatomic particles that make up the illusion of life.
That's right.
It's something in the film industry we're fairly used to because movies, certainly in the analog days, are also made up out of a flicker between light and dark. Something 33 to or 42 frames a second at fusion frequency creates the illusion of life, the illusion of movement. But it's made out of that constant war, that constant flicker between existence and non-existence.
Yes, and it's in our own lives between light and dark, and all of what that goes on. And just as you start to think that you're all light and you don't want any of the darkness, probably what you're going to attract is darkness. And when you live in powerful places like this, if you're afraid of your own stuff and your own shadow, it's going to attract you like really sticky bubble gum at a B movie. It's just like, ugh, I got that on my foot. I don't want that. It's that kind of stuff. And so when you started doing these movies, and my favorite title, I just love this, Dust Devil. I haven't seen it. I got to see it.
Yeah, hunt that one down.
I'll
It's
hunt that
it's
one out.
surprising.
Yeah, I can't wait. You're dealing with these dark issues, and what made you do something like Dust Devil?
Well, I guess ever since I was a kid, I've been taught to confront my fears, never to turn my back on something which is, yeah, terrifying or wrong. I've had a bad habit of going towards the source of tension or approaching the thing which is causing the problem. I think if we hide our heads from everything that's going on in this world, nothing ever changes. So some part of me I was born in South Africa, so it's natural I got involved in the anti-apartheid movement.
shadow, so to
Yeah,
speak.
certainly. Inches higher.
Yes. Okay, well, we'll just assume that we're still on, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious. I'm Bart Sharp, and we're with Richard Stanley on United Public Radio Network.
Good,
And
I think
we
we're
are
back.
At least,
Excellent.
it's really hard to determine, well, are you back, or is your sound on, or your video on? But we're having a little bit of technical difficulties in lovely France. Of course, if you get it this lovely in France, you got to have technical difficulties as well. Just maybe that's part of the karmic balance. But we're asking Richard about one of his movies, later movies, Dust Devil, and just the idea of why pick a topic like that, and what are you trying to tell the audience? Because everything, I've gotten to know, as I've gotten to know you, I don't see anything but goodness out of you. It's like your attentions towards life and to, the earth is all about doing things that are good for other people, good for the land. And you're trying to kind of punch people in the nose a little bit with a movie like Dust Devils. Like, wake up! Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, and Dust Devil was particularly a love letter to my native South Africa, because back in South Africa they had religious censorship, mostly under the Dutch Reformed Church, who basically banned every devil movie. The Exorcist, The Omen, even Rocky Horror Picture Show and Dawn of the Dead and Joe Dante's The Howling were criminalized in South Africa. People actually went to jail for having copies of the Rocky Horror Picture Show in their house.
Wow.
So yeah, they were very uncool. And I thought the South Africans deserved their very own bespoke devil movie. So Dust Devil was smart targeted for the white South African audience, and it deliberately deals with the twin topics of racism and domestic violence, which both seemed like hot button issues out there that nobody at that time was wanting to discuss. So I thought I would bring the devil home to them. I knew that being South Africa, the devil had to be blonde and blue-eyed and fully Aryan, and the forces of good in Dust Devil, strangely enough, are represented by the local witch doctor, the local Sangoma, who was played by a very fine actor, John Matshikiza, and a Zulu cop played by Zakes Mackay. So Dust Devil's definitely it's got a socio-political context, but beyond that, it's an African Western with occult horror elements, but there's also a love story in there. So I hope it's roundly entertaining. I like everything I do to be a full meal. I also like the work to be amusing. I hope to get laughs out of the audience as well as everything else. But more than anything, I like to show people something they've literally never seen or imagined before.
Yes, and when you walk into Richard's house, we're only going to show this part. We're not going to do a grand tour of his house. And also, I just wanted to say hello to Phyllis and Carrie. Thanks for tuning in. And yes, we are having problems here, but we're going to keep talking, because that's what we do, is keep talking. But there's a variety of things here in his home of, A to Z topics and all different types of things. And one of the things that I saw back this summer when I visited Richard last year was a lot of books on Otto Rand. Hey, Melinda. And he was saying, yeah, I'm writing this book about Otto Rand, and now it's getting close to putting out. It's called,
well, here in Europe, it's floating around under this title, The Last Crusade, because Otto Rahn was the German Jewish Grail historian whose work really inspired the Indiana Jones movies. And in America, it will be available next year from Inner Traditions, which is a publishing company based in Vermont. And I believe in the United States, it will be entitled Grail Hunter. So this is coming your way. It should be in shops next spring. It's the result of approximately 30 years of obsessive research. Basically, when I first heard of Otto Rahn, the notion that this German Jewish Grail historian had been here in the Pyrenees and had allegedly found the treasure of the ages, the story seemed so far-fetched that I set about fact-checking it and trying to find out how much of it was myth and how much of it was real. This was back in the 20th century, in the 1990s, at which point in time, a lot of folk who had been in command positions in World War II were still alive. And I was also able to track down a number of Otto Rahn's friends, companions, and his surviving family members, including his niece Ingeborg, who still had his unpublished manuscripts and his teddy bear and a number of other fascinating items. So we were gradually able to define not only that Otto Rahn had existed, but to try to pin down the facts of his case, given that Otto believed that Parsifal, the medieval Grail romance, reflected a true story or a true history, and that the Grail had allegedly been here or still was here in the Pyrenees. And given that this reflects on some pretty weighty matters, such as just whose cup is it anyways. And
now I'm going to give a little bit of background with this. I know you're rolling, but this would be associated. Otto Rahn was forcibly, or like maybe forcibly in a friendly way, to become part of the Third Reich in Nazi Germany. And so he was the guy who went down with all the Germans to Renly Chateau and started investigating, trying to find a Grail. Is that correct?
Yeah, in truth, Otto had done his work before getting involved with the Nazis. In that Otto was obsessed with the Holy Grail since childhood. He grew up in the Black Forest near the ruins of Wildenborg Castle, where Wolfram von Eschenbach wrote Parsifal in the 12th century. So I think that had been part of his life right from the beginning. And he did most of his research here in the Pyrenees before the SS even existed. Before the rise of Heinrich Himmler's Black Order. And this led to the publication of his first book, Crusade Against the Grail, which was also really the first widely distributed book to appear outside of France, to tell the story of the Albigensian Crusade and to tell the story of the Cathars and the rise, glory, and fall of Montsegur, which is a hell of a story. And it had really been kept a secret pretty much by both by the kings of France and the Holy Roman Church for 7 centuries. So Otto really played a role in basically breaking open that conspiracy of silence.
So here's a guy who had all of this research done, had the books, and yet when he was hired or maybe forced in a really friendly, cooperate us, you don't say no to the Nazis, just like you don't say no to Voldemort.
Yeah, you can't say no to Heinrich Himmler.
And yet he never found the Grail, but yet if there was anybody that could have found it, it would have been him.
Well, that all comes down to what we think a Grail is, but that might take us away from our topic. I mean, in reference to light and darkness, for me, the Grail is very much the possibility of peace, of balance, of synergy, the marriage of the sun and the moon, the idea that somehow this eternal conflict between light and dark over, or constantly fighting over who is the most powerful and who created who, might one day be resolved. And the Grail seems to offer a possibility of peace, of a balance between masculine and feminine between these different opposing energies. The cure for the world's pain, to some extent.
So we see it so much as a magical vessel, but it also could be something that we strive for, or maybe a vibrational concept. Maybe it has a lot of possibilities there.
Well, a lot of folk would find the idea of the Grail's existence far-fetched, but if we are to assume that our physical reality, the material world, is the material expression of the soul, of a spiritual process, then there's no reason why a spiritual ideal like the Grail wouldn't have a physical manifestation, wouldn't manifest into our world and come into people's lives at a particular point in time for a particular reason. And in point of fact, there are multiple relics which could be identified as the Holy Grail, physical relics such as the Cup of Valencia, or the alleged blood of Christ in the Sanctuary of the Holy Blood in Bruges, which you could say, legitimately are the Grail.
Thank you, Miki Volnik. Love it. The Grail is possibly for peace. Thank you, and receive you very well. Thank you, Miki. See you tomorrow. Miki is a local here that is on the show a few weeks ago, and we're going out power spot hunting tomorrow. It's going to be really good, really amazing. But what you maybe be insinuating is that the Grail just pops up, that it just has been shown and maybe mysteriously appears. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, it seems to be, a material symbol of spiritual attainment. And certainly Otto, I guess, found a Grail of sorts, what we think of as the now as the Pyrenean Grail, the Graal Pyrenean, which is associated with these meteoric black stones that came out of the Ariège, and the meteoric relics that Anton and Goodell unearthed back before the war.
Wow. Wow. Were those stones like found in the rivers? I've always heard about those stones, that they just have very special properties. Is that what I'm hearing you say? That they just kind of appear? Am I missing it?
Well, I think we don't know for sure whether they're meteorites or tektites, but they're in a very deep strata, which indicates that they're probably from millions or hundreds of millions of years ago, from some pre-human time on Earth, and were buried deep beneath the Earth's mantle for millions and millions of years, until they were plowed to the surface during the last ice age by the glacier that cut the valley of the Ariège.
Wow.
The whole of the valley of the Ariège is glacier cut, and it was gouged out during the ice age, and this cut through into a very, very deep strata. So at the lower levels of the valley, down parts of the river and in the caves, the strata is exposed. And because of the special properties of the stones, which are magnetic and smooth and dark, they never rust, but when you rub two of them together, they bleed. They secrete a ferrous solution, 99% pure iron, which resembles blood, and as a result, you can imagine the effect of this on a superstitious mind. But they're also alleged to have powerful healing virtues, and have clearly been prized since the dawn of time.
And if you've been anywhere in the Ariège region, it's of course up into the Pyrenees and the whole land of the Pyrenees Mountains in southwest France. We're talking south of Carcassonne, 50 miles north of the Mediterranean Sea, or 60 kilometers, something like that, maybe a little bit more. But it has a certain special just power And the river Richards is talking about runs through Tarascon. Is that correct? That river,
Yeah.
and that's where a lot of those are found. Along with that is a holy place of the Cathars. Uh, that's where they were. Some of the monks, or the parfaits or parfaites, did their sojourn. And there's a cave there called Grot Le Bethlehem. I'm sure you've been.
Oh, yeah.
And there is also a place there where they have a space for the Grail there. You have any feelings that the Cathars were somewhere along that same path as what you're talking about?
Well, I think to some extent it's a war or a quest which has been going on from age to age, from one lifetime to the next. And in different periods of human history, this conflict or the struggle between these opposing forces finds different manifestation, different actors to play the roles. And certainly at that point in time, in the 12th and the 13th century, um, the um, the so-called Cathars came to embody a movement of spirit, which came into opposition with the patriarchal Holy Roman Church. But it's also because the fact that the Cathars were at least open to equal rights. It was a world in which women could command armies, could officiate as priests, where children could take their mothers' surnames, where women were allowed to inherit land. And it was a time when, serfs could ennoble themselves. Nobility was not strictly the domain of blood. You could actually some kind of upward mobility was still possible. So the Holy Roman Church had to stamp it out. They had to destroy it in order to maintain their power.
Yeah, just to get right down to the root of it all and exterminate them.
Yeah, they feared the Cathars and they feared the force they represented because they felt that unless they were completely exterminated, totally wiped from the face of the earth, and all trace of their writing destroyed, the entire language was obliterated, that it posed a threat powerful enough to overthrow the Roman Church, to effectively change the world. So they were obliterated with extreme prejudice, and in a number of horrific genocidal ways that we will not vocalize on air.
And so Otto spent a lot of time in the Qatar lands investigating, searching for the Grail, searching for these things. Do you think he found any answers of what the Qatars had with this? Any more that we haven't covered? Because we're
Well, it's way more than we can cover, but I think on his journey through life, Otto passed through all the stages of initiation, and in the end, perhaps was asked to make a leap of faith. I mean, it's not an easy path, the path of the Grail, and certainly Otto made terrible mistakes. He couldn't have maybe avoided the situation. He was partly Jewish through his mother, but also gay, and knew that if his identity was found out, he would be killed. But at the same time, could not say no to Heinrich Himmler's offer. I was effectively inducted into the Black Order. To use Otto's words, quote, "I was looking for divinity, yet I find myself at the gates of hell." And I think when you go towards something like the Grail, you go towards an extreme purity. Things polarize, and this is also the time when you will end up confronting its antithesis.
yeah, yeah. Let's hold that thought because we're right in midway of the show. My name is Bart Sharp, and you're on Becoming Quantum Conscious. And we are with Richard Stanley tonight or today, depending what time zone you're in, talking about his latest book or upcoming book. We're sitting with it at the table. I have my copy. It's called The Last Crusade, The Life of Otto Braun, really showing a life of somebody that goes highly into light and then gets pulled into the darkness without much choice, and all of what that struggle was. It's a great book that explores light and dark, and that's what the theme is today. And just to let everybody know where you're at on the radio or website, you are on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3 out of New Orleans, Louisiana, on Roku, UPR website, Facebook, X. God, every time I say X, that one just got it.
Well, thank you for having us as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you.
And for inviting us into your lives.
Yes, yes. And so here we are, with this light and dark. And so much of this theme is what you've told me so far is it's everywhere in everybody's lives where we have to deal with the light and darkness. And you've been confronted with it all of your life, being whether you're in South Africa or in France. What I always say about Richard is he's pretty darn fearless about approaching things. And that's a lot what his movies and books do, is confront the darkness, even though it might look dark. So it's pretty interesting on that level. Courageous. A guy I wouldn't want to get in a fight with, but I'd sure love to share a beer with. So could you give anybody advice on how they deal with their own darkness? Deal with their own light?
Well, I mean, there's literally no light without darkness, no darkness without light. I am of the opinion that in the final stand, the wrong will fail, the right prevail, goodwill on earth and peace to humankind. I do think that lies and evil cannot stand in the face of the truth, not forever. The light ultimately is stronger, but it's in real life. Things happen in shades of grey. Everything is mixed up in such a way that it's really difficult to tell light from darkness. And there's never been an evil person, I think, in this world, very few at least, who actually thought they were doing evil. Most of the most terrible things in this world are done by people who think they're doing good, who are trying to build a better world or create some form of utopia. And unfortunately, the road to hell is paved with with good intentions.
Indeed, it is. And it's so important that where you look at the people that you do not like, not to make them your enemy, as we see this in the United States just ripe and true, and to just keep asking those questions. I wonder what made him think that way, or wonder what it's like to be in his shoes. Or the question I always like to say, and I say this with humility and sincerity, I wonder what pain they're in that creates whatever behavior that they're doing that's annoying to me, or aversive, or I think is dangerous, and try to look in what that person's pain is, but also what's inside of me that's similar. Because our stories are matched. If they weren't bothering me, that doesn't, if they were bothering me, it means that I probably have an issue similar to theirs. And, I'm just trying to always get in touch with what that is. And in your movies, do you think you have some of these people that are just wrapped up in their own shadows so much and they can't really see it, and they're kind of blinded by it almost, and so therefore they go out and do whatever they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens in real life as much as movies, which is it seems to me that as aforementioned, that these battles and dramas reenact themselves over and over again, and people are recast into the roles of persecutor or heretic and accuser, accused, over and over. We see insane echoes in history that are parallels between, say, the the Crusaders and the Albigensian Crusade and the war against the Cathars and the Nazis from World War II. These forces come back in different forms, and the confrontations are reenacted. The situation here in the Pyrenees under Nazi occupation and under the occupation of the Inquisition and the Crusaders, and the gap between the Inquisition and the Gestapo and, say, Homeland Security or GRU or the KGB is very narrow. The same dramas and events seem to compelled to reenact themselves over and over
And it's also something about, well, what makes you susceptible to being manipulated? And a great book is by Alice Miller. She wrote this For Your Own Good, and she goes into the psychology of Nazi Germany and Hitler. And when you look at the Nazis, or let's just say the Germans, before they became Nazis, or before that party came into effect, was they were a beaten people. They were in World War I, and they were a defeated country, and they were forced to suffer through the European Union. The European Union did not give them many concessions, so they were spending a decade or two suffering in a poor economy, struggling. And here somebody came on that would tell them what they wanted to hear. I have answers that will make you prosperous again. I will give you all of these things that you're afraid of. I will heal them. I will cure them. And he did so convincingly. And the people were in such fear and such pain, and they're in this judgment that this is so awful and I can't do it myself. Therefore, when somebody says, I have the answer for you, you're susceptible to manipulation. And I think that's a lot what happens with that. It's happening today. I think we're scared. We're scared of all the things challenges were going on in the world, from the health of the planet, food, energy, the list goes on and on. And so, how do you deal with your fear? How do you deal with that and feel what's inside of you? I like it here in where Richard lives in Bond. It's a beautiful town. It's high energy. And I see a really interesting polarity here, because there's some people that become very lethargic, and it seems to attract this real lethargic crowd. And at the same time, you got people like Richard, and just down the street, a guest on my show a couple of weeks ago, Annie Williams, and they're writing books, they're going out and lecturing, they're doing all of these things. And of course, you're creating a new movie right now. You're into H.P. Lovecraft. You're just right in that creative groove.
Yeah, and it's a very strange world. But yeah, I'm heading back to Lovecraft country next month, and heading for Providence, Rhode Island, and looking forward to making some big announcements. The next beast is on its way, and it's another iteration of the same conflict, the same constant sparring match between these different forces that are out there.
So whenever I've been in your home, I see lots of Lovecraft stuff. You've talked about him. But I want to ask you personally, why does he speak to you?
Probably because he was my mom's favorite author, and she introduced me to him really young. So I guess like Sarah Connor training her kid to hate machines and fight Terminator robots, my mom trained me to reverence the old gods and to read Lovecraft. And that set me on a certain path, which has brought me here to the zone where so many different currents converge.
What do you think the old gods symbolizes in the Lovecraft stuff? Because you mentioned that quite a few times, and one of your new projects is in the search for the old gods. It's one of the themes. So what is it about the old gods?
Well, I think all of us are fascinated by the idea of what created us. And Lovecraft, I guess, imagines his anti-human, otherworldly, alien deities in a way that's completely beyond our ability to comprehend or reason with. I think perhaps his best metaphor for this is the meteorite in Color Out of Space, because a meteorite has the ability to create all life on Earth through, like the panspermia theory, through seeding the cosmos with long-chain protein molecules. But it also has the ability to destroy all life on Earth and end everything in the blink of an eye. So it has these massive godlike powers of creation and negation, but it's not even conscious of it. It is completely unconscious to our human affairs and our everyday dramas. So I've been, I guess, drawn to Lovecraft's world just as in an attempt to come to terms with my creator or whatever forces truly made the place that we're currently living in.
That sounds juicy. It's like just walking on that edge about disaster and creation, all there. And it's so much about, I think that's just been throughout history, though. This is not the first time in history that we feel like we're on the edge. When you read history, people have believed that we're going to have cataclysmic things happening all throughout history. It's part of what life is. And it just sounds like Lovecraft is kind of exploring that tension about what that is.
Yeah.
And so any advice you could give people to not being real that the tension's there, but what advice would you give people on how to deal with it?
Well, I think pretty much anyone who's looked into the void long enough or has been confronted by something really terrifying realizes that beyond a certain point it folds into wonder. That there's a terror which is always there, which this fear of losing yourself, of death, of losing your body or losing your mind or your consciousness, which causes us to pull back and to cower away from these things. And beyond that, once you realize it honestly doesn't matter, it exists a wonder and a, a power which I think we can strive towards.
Hmm. That is wonderful. As you say, you have to look in the void or what you have created as the void inside of yourself to really get the power that, yeah, I can go beyond it, or I'm willing to just have it there. That's how I deal with fears. Is like if I can see it, look it straight in the eye, and totally accept it, then I don't have to be pushing all of this energy at it to keep it away from me. I can actually embrace it and have it. You know, so it's like that's one of my superpowers is to receive it, but also have the awareness to be able to look it straight in the eye.
I think it's vital that folk own their darkness and resist the temptation to project it onto others. But I don't even like to use the term darkness because there's nothing bad about the dark. Darkness and evil ain't the same thing. Night is a beautiful time, and I've never been afraid of the dark from the point of view that ever since I was a child, I've found the dark comforting. It's a good place to hide. When I was running away from crazy adults as a young child, I always fled into the dark and hid up trees, and it was a safe place. A bright, yeah, floodlit room
Mm.
with no furnishings is a much more dangerous and frightening place to be. So yeah, light and dark are, I guess, in no ways synonymous with good and evil any more than that would be
Yeah.
with matriarchy and patriarchy or any of the other weird forces that are at work here in the zone, in the region that for a long time was referred to as the devil's chessboard in pre-New Age times. The
Yes.
devil's chessboard with the two wrens, de Ren, Ren le Ban and Ren le Chateau,
Yes.
the two queens, the reign being queen in French of the chessboard.
It's actually like a big electric chessboard. That electricity is the power of the land, and it's a very defined feminine land, but yet it keeps activating you. And the whole thing about it, the shadow and the ego, is it wants you to let go of all of this things that you're afraid of, because if you let go of those things, then you'd really evolve into a greater human being. And the ego wants us to do that. It wants us to resolve these things. So it sets us up for learning it in a harsh way sometimes. And that's one of the greatest lessons of life, is to believe that you're playing beyond that. And, we're all waiting for this polarity to begin to change, and we grow beyond it. And hi, Carrie. Hi, Julie. Uh, we're just working at doing it. So living in a magnified place like this really helps that happen.
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, locals in Ren le Ban do call the place Ren the Damned, and think of it as the washing machine, the place where people get to go into their spin cycle and gets flung round and round and round until all of their sins are washed clean. And you've got the Benetier,
yes.
the font where the two rivers meet, which is supposed to wash all of your sins away if you dunk your head there 3 times. So
Yes.
that's very much the process going on down here in Ren le Ban.
Please save me from my pains.
Why, deliver me from the mire. And the devil's chessboard thing obviously also relates to Ren le Chateau, the chessboard floor, where you've got the demon Asmodeus looking down at the chessboard on the one side and Christ on the other, and the game being played out on the white and dark squares in between, which is also consistent with the layout of your regular Masonic lodge, and all of that because it's allegedly an echo of the ground plan of the Temple of Solomon.
So if you're afraid of all of this stuff, so many people are, they go running to some so-called expert, guru, priest, father figure, social media teacher, whatever, and say, you got the answers for me. What do you think about that? You don't seem like you're a guru follower, that you've had a spiritual teacher or something. That you look like you've just kind of taken the bull by the horns in your spiritual process. Did I assess you correctly about that?
Well, I've never really had a spiritual teacher or guru that was really worth a damn. But I did study anthropology, which taught me to to listen to without judgment to other people's points of view, to not be so cognicentric, not to be locked in your own culture and thoughts. So I've got to hear the views of an awful lot of deeply strange people over the years.
Yeah, quite an adventurer, all the way from South Africa to France and a lot of points in between. A world of experiences here, which makes you a much richer person in general with that. Wow. So how do you think, we're going back to Otto Rahn a lot, and I want to, because this is a great book, and I want everybody to be looking for it. In the United States, it'll be released next year, and it'll be called Grail Hunter.
Yeah, Otto Rahn, Grail Hunter from Inner Traditions, which is a Vermont-based company. Yeah. I believe it'll be coming out in early summer next year, so it's a bit of a wait.
Incidentally, this Otto Rahn's work inspired the Indiana Jones movies. A lot of it was following what Otto has studied and evolved with.
Well,
with that?
yeah, I mean, it's more a matter that Otto is at the base of something you might think of as the Nazi mysteries. There is the running story that the Third Reich tried to gain possession of a series of relics like the Spear of Longinus, the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail,
Hmm.
etc., etc. And this is a myth that's been floating around in various forms since the end of the war. So yeah, tracing all of that stuff back, you end up with like the Ahnenerbe SS and the SS archaeological department and the crazed pseudoscience work that they sponsored in that period.
It makes you wonder what would happen if Adolf Hitler did actually had the Grail in his hands and saw, oh, this just makes guide you to a vibration of more wholeness and completeness, and you feel love inside of you so much to the degree that you just want to help other people instead of kill them. Would have been a bit of a disappointment, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that the Grail is the promise of reconciliation,
Mm,
of peace, and of being healed and made whole again. And some which yeah, I think is a very valid thing to be searching for in this world. And most folk don't bother to search for grails unless they're already pretty damaged, like Otto.
yeah.
And
Sometimes you got to hit that far bottom before you start to climb your ways up. And all I can say, because I feel like I've been in a lot of that, um, it's it's not a short journey, but it's a journey that's very satisfying because with every step you get in a higher vibration, it just feels really good. It's my form of a drug, ecstasy through transformation, and maybe that's what uh, Otto was looking for because he was an intuitive guy. Uh, he felt something very strongly in the heart and his body, and was a keen intellect. He was gifted in all ways. He was taught that, and you know he was sincere.
yeah, and I guess he had a natural proclivity for power, of what you'd call power places.
Mm,
And then I found when I started going to the places he was writing about, such as Montsegur and the Lac de Diable, or Devil's Lake, that they were indeed very mysterious, powerful places.
mm,
He wasn't wrong. So I think his Otto had a good instinct for that,
yeah.
and he set me down that path, and because of his allegiances, the fact that he effectively sold out to the Nazis. Otto died young. He was either murdered or committed suicide in 1939. Where his body was found frozen on the German-French border when he was presumably trying to escape the SS and escape back to his beloved France. So yeah, Otto paid a very high price for for the mistakes he made,
Mm,
and as a result, his writing and all of his research was tarred with the brush of Nazism, of having been associated with the Black Order. So it was basically buried for decades.
yeah, and you just really get the goodness of this. Somebody that can be looking like they're so dark, and you might make these judgments like, oh, they'll pay for lifetimes for such things. He was actually just a sincere guy that had a love for the light, for mysticism, for the answers, and was put in a really difficult situation.
Um, World War II is a difficult time for spiritual people. And I think it was certainly a difficult time for occultists. Pretty
Indeed.
much all of the secret societies and occult seekers of the 1930s were effectively wiped out by the war.
Wow. So we're coming to the end of our show, and I need to do my call letters. But while I do the call letters, Richard, will you think about it like a 1 minute message you'd like to share with everybody? And you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious, and I am Bart Sharp, and you have been with Richard Stanley today or tonight, uh, talking about his upcoming book, The Last Crusade or The Grail Hunter, that'll be coming out in next summer in the United States. But you could probably get it here if you could get it shipped across the water. It's a great book. Um, also, you are on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5 out of New Orleans. Also on Roku, X, Facebook, UPRN website, and YouTube. And Richard, what parting words do you have for everybody?
Well, I think there's been a spiritual war between opposing forces or opposing polarities for the entirety of our history. But I truly believe that someday this war will end, and someday there will be a reconciliation, and that if as individuals we are judged at all, then we're judged according to which force we give our allegiance to. And I guess we stand on a sifting bridge, and we have to decide whether we side with the forces of the material world and the Rex Mundi, the great architect, the whatever it is that drives this material world, or do we side with the forces of spirit and the true kingdom of heaven?
Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been lots of fun, and we hope everybody comes back next week with Joseph Mock and Gestalt philosophies. Until then, we'll see you next week